The Galactic Trade Coalition had existed for 12,000 years. It was built on logic, math, and careful planning. Every route was calculated. Every resource was counted. Every decision was made by computers that never made mistakes. The Coalition believed this was the only way to run a galaxy. Then humans arrived. Stood at the bar of Station 17, a trading post floating at the edge of known space. He was a tall man with tired eyes and rough hands. His jacket was old and patched in 3 places. On his belt hung a small metal cup, dented from years of use. He was the captain of a cargo ship called the Morning Star, and right now he was listening to aliens panic. The main hall of the station was full of Coalition representatives. There were tall crystalline beings who spoke in musical tones. There were small furry creatures with 6 eyes. There were floating gas forms contained in metal suits. All of them were talking about the same thing, the crisis in the outer rim. A fungal spore had spread across 17 star systems. It had contaminated water purification machines. Without clean water, millions would die. The Coalition was calculating supply routes, but the numbers were bad. 14 months. That was the fastest they could deliver help using optimal paths. Sipped his coffee and did math on a napkin. His first officer, Park, appeared beside him. She was younger than him, with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. She had served with for 6 years and knew him better than anyone. "What are you calculating?" she asked. "Coffee stops," said. Looked at the napkin. It was covered in names of places she half recognized. Station names, moon bases, asteroid outposts. None of them were on official Coalition maps. "You are not thinking what I think you are thinking," she said. Smiled. It was not a comforting smile. Across the hall, a crystalline being named was addressing the crowd. Was an ambassador, one of the most respected voices in the Coalition. His body caught the light and scattered it into rainbows as he moved. "We must accept the reality," said. His voice was like wind chimes. "The optimal route takes 14 months. We cannot change physics. We cannot change distance. We can only work within the limits of the universe." Finished his coffee and walked toward the ambassador. The crowd parted. They knew humans. Humans had joined the Coalition only 30 years ago. They were considered a minor species, primitive, emotional. They fought among themselves constantly. They ate strange foods and drank poisonous liquids for fun. They were not taken seriously. Ambassador said, "I can do it in 6 weeks." The hall went silent. Turned slowly. His crystalline face could not show expression, but his voice carried amusement. "I am sorry. Did you say 6 weeks?" 6 weeks, repeated. "Maybe 5 if the coffee is good along the way." A sound moved through the crowd. It might have been laughter. It might have been confusion. With aliens, it was hard to tell. Captain paused. "I do not know your name." "The Morning Star." "Captain, the distance to the outer rim is 4,000 light years. The cargo requirement is 600 tons of water purification equipment. Our fastest ships, following the safest routes, calculate 14 months. You claim you can do this in 6 weeks, with 1 ship." "I did not say safest routes," said. "I said 6 weeks." His body flickered with inner light. This was how his species showed irritation. And how exactly would you accomplish this impossible task? Held up his napkin. It was covered in scribbled names and lines connecting them. It looked like a child's drawing. "Brew runs," he said. "I do not understand this term." Looked around the hall. Every alien eye was on him. He thought about how to explain something that was so obvious to humans and so invisible to everyone else. "Your Coalition measures distance in light years," he said. "Cold numbers. Point A to point B, you calculate the shortest path, the fuel requirements, the time needed. Very logical, very efficient." "Yes," said, "this is how physics works." "Humans measure distance differently," pointed at his napkin. "We measure it in Brew runs, the distance between places where you can get a good drink, A cup of coffee, a bowl of soup, a glass of something strong after a hard day. Stared at him, you measure interstellar distance by beverages. By people, said. Every stop on my list is a place where I know someone, or someone knows someone who knows me. Every stop is a place where a human has sat down with strangers and shared a drink and told stories. Every stop is a favor waiting to be called in, a friend waiting to help, a door waiting to be opened. He tapped the napkin. Your optimal route avoids all of these places. Your optimal route goes through empty space where nothing lives and no one helps. My route goes through the places where humans have been making friends for 30 years. The hall was very quiet now. You are suggesting, said slowly, that human social connections can somehow overcome the basic limits of space travel. Shrugged, I am suggesting that you have never seen humans when someone needs help, and there is coffee on the way. Appeared at his shoulder. She had the look she always got when was about to do something stupid. It was a patient look, a resigned look, the look of someone who had stopped trying to prevent disaster and had started planning how to survive it. Captain, she said quietly, a word. Ignored her, he was watching. The ambassador's crystalline body caught the light differently now. The irritation had faded. Something else had replaced it. Curiosity, perhaps, or the beginning of doubt. This is highly irregular, said. The coalition does not approve missions based on napkin drawings and beverage references. Then do not approve it, said. I am not asking for approval. I am telling you what I am going to do. When I arrive in the outer rim in 6 weeks with 600 tons of water purification equipment, you can decide if you want to say thank you or write a report about how I broke your rules. He turned and walked toward the exit. Followed because she always followed, even when she thought he was crazy. Behind them made a decision. Wait. Stopped but did not turn around. I will send an observer with you, said. A junior representative named Krill. He will document your methods. If you succeed, the coalition will want to understand how. If you fail, we will want to understand why. Finally turned. He smiled again, that uncomfortable smile that made nervous. Tell Krill to bring a strong stomach, he said, and to learn how to drink coffee. It is going to be a long 6 weeks. He walked out of the hall beside him, the napkin still clutched in his hand. Behind them, the coalition representatives began to talk all at once. None of them believed could do it. None of them understood what he was planning. But somewhere in the back of the hall, a small 4-armed amphibian named Krill was packing a bag and wondering what coffee tasted like. The Morning Star was about to prove that the galaxy had been measuring everything wrong. The Morning Star was not a beautiful ship. It was a cargo freighter built 40 years ago, held together with replacement parts, desperate repairs, and what Lee called engineering prayers. The hull was. The engines made sounds they should not make. The coffee machine in the kitchen was older than most of the crew. But the ship flew. It had always flown. And now it was loading 600 tons of water purification equipment while the coalition watched with doubt in their many eyes. Stood on the loading dock, watching his crew work. Was checking manifests, her tablet glowing in the dim light. Was arguing with a loading robot about weight distribution, using words that did not exist in any official language. And in the corner, looking deeply uncomfortable, stood Krill. Krill was an amphibian about 4 feet tall, with blue-green skin and 4 arms. His species, were known for their careful record-keeping and their inability to understand jokes. He carried a recording device in one hand, a translation unit in another, and a look of complete confusion on his face. Captain, Krill said, approaching slowly, I have been assigned to observe your mission. I am required to document all decisions and methods for coalition review. Good, said, do you drink coffee? I do not know what coffee is. You will learn. Turned and walked toward the ship. Krill followed, all 4 arms clutching his equipment nervously. Inside the Morning Star, the rest of the crew was waiting. Sat at the navigation console, her feet up on the dashboard, eating something from a plastic container. She was young, maybe 25, with short hair and eyes that had seen too much for her age. She had memorized more illegal trade routes than most criminals twice her age. Han was checking cargo straps in the main hold. He was older, with gray in his hair and scars on his hands. He had been a smuggler before he met. Now he was a cargo specialist. The difference, he often said, was mostly paperwork. "Everyone, this is Krill," announced. "He is here to watch us and write reports about everything we do wrong." "Hello, Krill," the crew said in unison without enthusiasm. Krill bowed awkwardly. "I am honored to observe human methods." "You say that now," said, not looking up from her food. "Wait until you see how we navigate." Moved to the center of the bridge and pulled out his napkin. It was now covered in even more scribbles, connected by lines that seemed to follow no logical pattern. "Our route," he said. Krill leaned forward, trying to make sense of it. "I do not understand. These points do not follow any standard navigation path. Several of them are not even registered locations." "Exactly," said. He pointed at the first stop. "This is an old mining station. It was decommissioned 15 years ago. Officially, it does not exist, but a group of retired miners still live there. They make alcohol from processed grain. Very strong, very good. One of them owes me money from a card game." He pointed at the second stop. "This is a moon around a gas giant. Refugees from a War III systems over settled there 8 years ago. They opened a tea house. Some others sent them supplies during their first winter. They remember." Third stop. Unofficial refueling point. Not on any map. Run by a family who left Coalition space because they did not like the rules. They will sell fuel to anyone who asks nicely and pays in physical goods instead of digital credits. Fourth stop. Fifth stop. Sixth stop. Each one had a story. Each one had a connection. Each one was a place where humans had made friends in a galaxy that thought friendship was inefficient. Krill's recording device was working overtime. These locations are not approved by the Coalition. Several are in restricted space. One appears to be inside a pirate territory. "About that," said, raising his hand, "I should mention that I dated the commander of that pirate fleet." Everyone looked at him. "It ended badly," he added, "but she still likes me, probably mostly." Krill made a sound that might have been distress. "This is highly irregular." "Yes," said, "that is the point." He sat down in the captain's chair and brought the engines online. The Morning Star shuddered, groaned, and then began to hum. It was not a healthy sound, but it was a familiar one. "Coalition ships follow approved routes," said, turning to face Krill. "They stop at approved stations. They interact with approved species. Everything is calculated, controlled, and predictable, and that is why it takes them 14 months to do what we will do in 6 weeks. "But how?" Krill asked. "The distances are the same. Physics does not change based on social relationships." "No," agreed, "but everything else does." He gestured at the navigation screen, where was entering coordinates. "At our first stop, we will trade some of our coffee supply for information about a shortcut through the Nebula Passage. The miners know paths that Coalition sensors cannot detect. At our second stop, the tea house owners will contact their cousins on a station 3 systems away, who will prepare extra fuel for our arrival. At our third stop, the family will tell us which hyperspace lanes are currently patrolled and which are empty." He leaned back in his chair. "Every stop makes the next stop easier. Every friend opens a door to another friend. The Coalition calculates routes based on distance. We calculate routes based on relationships, and relationships, Krill, are faster than light." The ship lifted off from the station, leaving Coalition space behind. Stars stretched into lines as the hyperdrive engaged. The Morning Star jumped into the void, following a path that made no mathematical sense. Krill sat in the observer's seat, all four arms wrapped around himself, trying to understand what he was seeing. Brought him a cup of coffee. It was black and bitter and smelled like burned earth. "Drink this," she said. "It will help." Krill looked at the cup with suspicion. "What does it do?" "It wakes you up, it makes you think faster, it makes long journeys feel shorter," she smiled slightly. "Also, it is how humans make friends. We offer drinks to strangers. We sit together and talk, and slowly strangers become allies." Krill took the cup carefully in two of his hands. He brought it to his mouth and tasted it. It was terrible. It was bitter and hot and strange. But it was also somehow comforting. Like the warmth was spreading through his body, reaching parts of him he did not know were cold. "I think I understand," he said slowly. "This beverage is not about the taste, it is about the sharing." Nodded. "Now you are starting to think like a human." In the pilot's seat laughed. "Give him 3 more cups and he will start making bad jokes. Give him 10 and he will fight someone in a bar. That is the human experience." Krill looked at his cup, then at the stars streaming past the window, then at the crew of the Morning Star laughing and working around him. He did not understand these humans. He did not understand their roots or their methods or their obsession with hot brown liquid. But he was beginning to suspect that the coalition had underestimated something very important. He took another sip of coffee and began writing in his journal. "Day 1, he recorded. "The humans have given me a bitter drink and told me it creates friendship. I do not believe them, but I am continuing to drink it anyway. I am not sure why." The Morning Star flew on, following a map made of memories and favors and cups of coffee shared across the stars. The hyperspace lane had collapsed. Stared at her navigation screen, watching the error messages multiply. What should have been a clear path through space was now a mess of gravitational distortion and radiation. A star had exploded somewhere nearby years ago, and the shockwave had finally reached this region. "We cannot go through," she said. "The lane is completely blocked." Stood behind her, arms crossed, face calm. "How long to go around?" 2 weeks, maybe more. The next stable lane is far from here." 2 weeks. That would destroy their schedule. That would prove the coalition right. That would mean people in the outer rim would wait even longer for help. Krill, who was now on his 15th cup of coffee and had stopped sleeping entirely, looked up from his journal. "This is unfortunate. Coalition protocols require waiting for official rerouting from Navigation Command. The wait time is typically 30 to 60 days. "We are not waiting," said. "Then what do you suggest? Physics cannot be negotiated with." Looked at the locked drawer under her console. The drawer had a label on it, handwritten in black marker. "Absolutely not." "No," said immediately. "Whatever is in that drawer, the answer is no." Was already opening it. Inside was a small data chip, old and scratched. She inserted it into the navigation computer. The screen changed. New paths appeared, overlaying the official maps. Routes that twisted through nebulas, skirted around dead zones, and cut through regions marked unexplored in coalition records. "What is this?" Krill asked, all 4 arms reaching toward the screen. "The Brew line," said. She pulled up the first route. It was a path through the Thornback Nebula, a cloud of gas and radiation that scrambled most sensors. Coalition ships avoided it completely, but on its map there was a thin line cutting straight through. 30 years ago, explained, humans started spreading across the galaxy. We were new, we were poor. We could not afford the best ships or the best routes, so we found other ways. She zoomed in on the path. Small markers appeared along it, each one labeled with a name and a date. These are the places where humans stop to rest, to trade, to drink. Every marker is a story, and every story is a shortcut that nobody else knows about. She pointed at the Thornback Nebula route. In 2847, a cargo ship called the Lucky Penny got lost in this nebula during a storm. The captain, a woman named O, spent 3 weeks finding a way out. She discovered that if you follow the radiation signature of a specific pulsar, the interference drops to almost nothing. A clear path, invisible to anyone who does not know to look for it. "How do you know this?" Krill demanded. "Because Captain O wrote it down. She shared it with other human captains. They shared it with more. It spread through bars and trading posts and late-night conversations. It became part of the Brew line. Was already doing calculations. If we take the Thornback route, we save 6 days. What else do you have?" Pulled up more paths. One went through the territory of a species called the, who were extremely hostile to outsiders, but the map showed a safe passage. "Fixed the personal shuttle of their ambassador 5 years ago," said. "In exchange, he received lifetime passage rights through their space. They honor debts. We just have to broadcast his identification code." Another path cut through a region marked Sacred Zone, no entry by coalition maps. "There is a human monastery on Earth," explained. "Buddhist. They have a sister temple on a planet in this zone. The monks there have been exchanging messages with Earth for 20 years, carried by human ships. If we agree to deliver a message, they will let us pass." Krill was writing furiously. His journal was already half full. This is not how space travel works. You cannot build navigation routes on personal favors. "Watch us," said from the cargo hold. Made the decision. We take the Thornback route, then the passage, then the Sacred Zone, calculate the full path. "Already done," she smiled. "If everything works, we save 9 days total." The Morning Star changed course, diving toward the swirling purple clouds of the Thornback Nebula. Warning alarms began to sound as the sensors detected increasing radiation. Krill gripped his seat with all 4 arms. "We are going to die," he said flatly. "Probably not," said cheerfully. "The Lucky Penny only lost 2 crew members when they made this trip, and they did not have the map. We will be fine." 2 crew members is not fine. It is fine adjacent. Adjusted their shields and began scanning for the pulsar. It took 10 minutes to find it, hidden behind layers of interference. But once she locked onto its radiation pattern, the path became clear. The storm seemed to part around them. The interference dropped. "I see it," said. "The path is real." O was right. They flew through the nebula in silence. Outside the windows, purple and gold clouds swirled in patterns that looked almost alive. Lightning flickered in the distance. It was beautiful and terrifying. 3 hours later, they emerged on the other side. Krill stared at the clear space ahead of them. His coffee cup was empty. His journal was full of notes he was not sure how to explain. "How many of these shortcuts exist?" he asked quietly. Shrugged. "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Every time a human travels somewhere new, they look for a place to rest, a place to drink, a place to meet people, and then they tell other humans what they found. It is not a formal system. It is just how we are. You have built an entire navigation network based on social connections. We have built an entire navigation network based on being friendly," corrected. "The social connections are just how friendliness is measured." Krill was quiet for a long time. Then he opened a new page in his journal and wrote a title at the top, "Why Humans Are Terrifying." "That is a strong word," said, reading over his shoulder. "It is accurate," Krill said. "The Coalition has spent 12,000 years building infrastructure. Ships, stations, hyperspace lanes, trillions of credits, centuries of planning, and you have built something parallel in 30 years using nothing but beverages and conversation." "When you put it that way," said, "it does sound impressive." "It is not impressive. It is terrifying because we did not see it. We did not know it existed. You built an invisible network inside our galaxy, and we had no idea." Poured himself another cup of coffee. Do not feel bad, we did not do it on purpose. We just did what humans do. We found places that felt like home, we made friends, we shared drinks. The network built itself. He raised his cup in a small toast. To Captain O of the Lucky Penny, whoever she was, wherever she is now. Her shortcut just saved 9 days and probably thousands of lives. The crew raised their cups. Even Krill, after a moment of hesitation, lifted his empty mug. To Captain O, they said together. The morning star flew on, following paths that existed only in human memories, shortcuts that no one had ever thought to map, routes measured not in light years but in cups of coffee and moments of kindness. And Krill, despite everything he had been taught about logic and efficiency and proper methods, found himself hoping they would succeed. He was not sure when that had happened. Probably around the 5th cup of coffee. The micrometeorite storm came without warning. One moment, the morning star was cruising through empty space. The next moment, thousands of tiny rocks were tearing through the hull like bullets through paper. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered. The ship shook so hard that Krill fell out of his seat and landed on all 4 arms. "Cargo hold breach," shouted from the engineering station. "We are losing atmosphere in Section 3. Was already running, was behind him, was sealing emergency doors, trying to contain the damage, kept the ship stable, fighting against the impacts that threatened to spin them into the void. It took 20 minutes to stabilize. 20 minutes of chaos, fear, and desperate work. When it was over, the crew gathered in the cargo hold and stared at the damage. 40% of their water purification equipment was destroyed, crushed, burned, exposed to vacuum, useless. Krill did the math. With this loss, you cannot complete the mission. The remaining supplies are not enough to help 17 star systems. Said nothing. He was staring at the destroyed cargo, his face blank. Captain said gently, "We should contact the coalition, request replacement supplies. They can send another ship to meet us." "How long would that take?" She hesitated. 6 weeks, maybe 8. By the time we reach the outer rim, we would be almost back to the original coalition timeline. 14 months. That was what the coalition had promised. 14 months of people suffering, 14 months of people dying. They had promised to do better. They had promised 6 weeks. Pulled out his personal communicator. It was an old device, scratched and worn. It did not use coalition networks. It used something older, something humans had built for themselves. "What are you doing?" Krill asked. "Making calls," said. He started with, was a captain had served with 10 years ago, before the Morning Star, before everything. They had gotten drunk together on a station near Earth and had promised to help each other if times got hard. Now commanded a ship called the Insomniac, running luxury cruises for wealthy aliens. Said when the connection opened, "I need help." He explained the situation, the damaged cargo, the dying systems, the promise he had made. Did not hesitate. "I am 3 days from your position. I have spare purification tablets in my emergency supplies. Not much, but they are yours." "What about your cruise contract?" "The passengers can wait. They are going to see the crystal moons of Vega. The moons will still be there next week. Those people in the outer rim might not be." Ended the call and made another, then another, then another. Krill watched in confusion as contacted ship after ship. He spoke to captains he had known for decades and captains he had met only once. He called in favors, offered favors, and sometimes just asked for help with no promise of return. Doctor was running a medical supply ship 4 systems away. She changed course immediately, bringing emergency water tablets and a doctor trained in crisis response. Moon was retired. He had not flown in 5 years. But when called, he pulled his old ship out of storage and loaded it with everything he had. "Why?" asked him. "You do not owe me anything." "Your kid bought me a drink once," said. "On Station 47, 3 years ago, I was having a bad day. He did not know me, but he saw I was alone and he sat with me. We talked for hours. He never asked for anything. He just kept me company. Did not have a kid. He did not know who was talking about, but it did not matter. Somewhere, some human had shared a drink with a stranger, and now that stranger was flying across the galaxy to help. That was how it worked. That was how it always worked. Within 72 hours, 11 ships had changed course. 11 human captains had abandoned their schedules, their contracts, their plans. Some of them knew personally. Some knew friends of friends. Some had just heard the call go out on human communication networks and decided to help. Krill watched them arrive on the sensors. One by one, human ships dropped out of hyperspace and formed up around the morning star. They were cargo ships and passenger vessels and old military craft. They were large and small, new and ancient. They flew no flag and followed no commander. But they flew together. "I do not understand," Krill said. He had stopped writing in his journal. He was just standing on the bridge, all four arms hanging loose, watching the impossible happen. There was no order, no command structure, no official request. How did they know to come? "They knew because someone needed help," said. "That is all humans need to know." But the cost, the fuel, the lost income, the disruption to their lives, the rational choice would be to continue their original routes and let the coalition handle the crisis through proper channels. Laughed, it was not a happy laugh. "Krill, do you know why I owe Captain 3 life debts?" Krill shook his head. "Because 3 times when I needed help he came. He did not ask if it was rational. He did not calculate the cost. He just came. And because he came for me, I will come for anyone he asks me to help. And everyone I help will help someone else, and so on. Forever. That is not a system, that is chaos." "No," said, walking onto the bridge. He looked tired but calm. "That is family, not blood family, chosen family. The family you build one drink at a time, one conversation at a time, one act of kindness at a time. The coalition has rules and structures and hierarchies. We have each other." The convoy was complete now. 11 ships plus the Morning Star, all carrying supplies gathered from across the galaxy, more than triple the original shipment, more than anyone had expected. But the ships had not just brought supplies. They had brought people, doctors who had heard there was a medical crisis, engineers who specialized in water systems, teachers who thought refugees might need schools, cooks who believed hungry people deserved good food. None of them had been asked to come. They had just heard that someone needed help, and they had shown up. Contacted them from coalition headquarters. His crystalline face appeared on the screen, and for the first time, Krill saw something other than certainty in his expression. "Captain," said, "I am receiving reports of unauthorized human ship movements across multiple sectors. 11 vessels have abandoned their registered routes without explanation. Coalition traffic control is concerned." "They are with me," said. "I see that. May I ask why?" "Because we had a problem and they came to help." Was quiet for a long moment. "We have been watching your progress. Your route makes no sense by any metric we use. Your methods violate dozens of regulations. And yet you are ahead of schedule despite a catastrophic cargo loss. We do not understand how this is possible." Looked at his crew, at who had followed him into chaos without question, at who kept the ship flying through sheer stubbornness, at who knew paths that no one else could see, at who had traded a criminal life for a family he had chosen. At Krill, who was holding an empty coffee cup and looking at the human fleet with something like wonder. "Ambassador," said, "the humans have built a parallel infrastructure, not with credits or technology, with relationships, with trust, with the simple promise that when someone needs help, someone else will come." He gestured at the ships on the screen. "This is what that looks like. This is what 30 years of sharing drinks with strangers becomes. A network that moves faster than your calculations because it is not calculated at all. It just exists. It has always existed wherever humans have gone. Process this. His crystalline body flickered with light, colors shifting as he thought. I must revise my assessment of humanity, he finally said. I had classified your species as minor, primitive, emotional. And now? His voice was different when he answered, softer, almost respectful. Now I am classifying you as something we have never encountered before. A species whose greatest technology is not in their ships or their weapons. It is in their willingness to help each other without being asked. Smiled, we call it being human, ambassador. It is not complicated, it is just what we do. The fleet flew on, 12 ships now, carrying hope across the stars. And in his corner of the bridge, Krill began a new page in his journal. Day 15, he wrote. I have witnessed something the Coalition has never seen, a rescue mission built on coffee and kindness. I do not know how to explain it in my report. I am not sure the Coalition will believe me. I am not sure I believe it myself. He paused, then added one more line. But I am glad I was here to see it. The outer rim had been dying slowly. 17 star systems scattered across a region of space that most of the galaxy had forgotten. Mining colonies and research stations and refugee settlements, all dependent on the same water purification technology. When the fungal spore spread, it killed their machines one by one. Clean water became precious, then rare, then almost gone. They had sent calls for help. The Coalition had answered with calculations. 14 months. Hold on for 14 months and help would arrive. Some of them would not last 14 months. Governor Shin of Outpost 7 stood on her observation deck and watched the sky. She was an old woman now, gray-haired and tired. She had led this colony for 20 years, through hard times and harder times. But this was the worst. 3 of her people had died last week from water sickness. More would follow. She had stopped hoping for miracles. Miracles did not happen in the outer rim. Then the sky lit up. One ship dropped out of hyperspace, then another, then another. They kept coming, more and more, until there were 12 vessels hanging in the stars above her colony like a constellation that had not existed before. Her communicator crackled. A voice came through, rough and tired but somehow warm. Outpost 7, this is Captain of the Morning Star. We have water purification equipment. Lots of it. Also doctors, engineers, and some really excellent coffee. Where would you like us to land? Governor Shin did not answer for a long moment. She could not find words. Governor, the voice said, are you there? You are early, she finally said. Her voice cracked. The Coalition said 14 months. The Coalition calculates things differently than we do. We measure distance in coffee stops. It is faster. She laughed. It was a strange sound, one she had not made in a long time. I do not understand what that means. That is okay. Most people do not. Just tell us where to land and we will explain everything over a drink. The 12 ships descended through the atmosphere like falling stars. They landed in fields and parking lots and anywhere there was space. Before the engines had even cooled, humans were climbing out, unloading cargo, setting up equipment. Krill watched it all through the window of the Morning Star. He had filled 3 journals during the journey. He had drunk enough coffee to give himself a permanent tremor in 2 of his hands. He had learned things about humans that no Coalition report had ever mentioned. Now he was watching them work, and he still did not fully understand. They did not wait for orders. They did not form committees or request approvals. They just saw what needed to be done and did it. A doctor named set up a medical station in a warehouse. An engineer named Moon started repairing broken purification machines with tools he had brought from his own garage. Captain was distributing food to a crowd of refugees who had not eaten properly in weeks. And everywhere humans were talking to locals, sitting with them, sharing drinks, telling stories, building connections that Krill knew would last long after the crisis was over. Found Governor Shin in her office. She was sitting behind her desk, staring at reports that no longer mattered. When he entered, she looked up with eyes that were red from tears she was trying to hide. "You actually came," she said. "You actually came in 6 weeks." 5 weeks and 4 days, corrected. "We made good time. The coffee was excellent at most stops." She shook her head. "I do not understand. The Coalition has known about this crisis for months. They have resources we cannot imagine, ships and technology and 12,000 years of experience. But they gave us 14 months. You gave us 5 weeks. How?" Sat down across from her. He was exhausted. He had not slept properly in days, but he smiled anyway because that was what humans did when someone needed comfort. "The Coalition builds systems," he said. "They build rules and procedures and optimal paths. Everything is calculated. Everything is efficient. Nothing is wasted." "That sounds good." "It is good for normal times, but crises are not normal times. Crises need something else. They need people who will drop everything and come running, not because it is efficient, but because it is right." He leaned back in his chair. "Humans are not efficient. We are messy and emotional, and we make decisions that do not make logical sense. We fly across the galaxy because someone bought us a drink once. We change our entire lives because a friend called and said they needed help. We build networks out of coffee and conversation, and the simple promise that no one will be alone when things get hard." Governor Shin was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her desk and pulled out a bottle. It was old, dusty, and clearly precious. "This is the last bottle of real alcohol on this station," she said. "I was saving it for, I do not know, the end maybe, but I think this is a better use." She poured 2 glasses and handed one to the humans who measure distance in coffee stops, she said. "To the people who kept hopping when hope was hard," replied. They drank together. Outside, the work continued. Water purification machines hummed back to life. Medical stations treated the sick. Food was distributed to the hungry. And everywhere, humans and locals sat together, sharing drinks, sharing stories, building the invisible network that would connect this remote corner of the galaxy to everywhere else humans had ever been. Arrived 3 days later, his crystalline ship descended with perfect precision, and he stepped out onto the colony's surface with the careful dignity of a coalition ambassador. What he found surprised him. The crisis was already over. The water systems were functioning. The sick were being treated. The hungry were fed. And in the center of the colony, where a warehouse had once stood empty, there was now His cousin had opened it on the 2nd day. She had arrived on a ship from 3 systems away, carrying coffee beans and tea leaves and a determination to create a place where people could rest. There was already full, humans and locals sitting together, talking and laughing and forming bonds that would last for years. Found there sitting at a corner table, drinking coffee with Krill. "Ambassador," said, nodding in greeting, "would you like to sit?" Sat, his crystalline body caught the light from the windows, scattering rainbows across the table. "I have come to deliver an official message," said. "The Coalition has reclassified humanity. You are no longer designated as a minor species. You have been elevated to strategic resource status." "What does that mean?" "It means the Coalition recognizes that you possess something we do not understand but cannot ignore. A capability that exists outside our models and calculations. Something that makes you extremely valuable in times of crisis." Nodded slowly. "And what is that capability?" Was silent for a moment. His species did not show emotion easily, but something in his posture suggested he was struggling to find the right words. "You care," he finally said. "Not efficiently, not strategically, not when it makes logical sense. You just care about strangers and friends and people you have never met, and that caring creates networks that move faster than any system we have ever built." He looked around at the humans and aliens sharing drinks and stories. The galaxy measures distance in light years, said. Cold calculations of space and time, but you measure it differently. You measure it in connections, in kindness, in cups of coffee shared with people who were strangers before and are friends after. Pushed a cup across the table. It was filled with dark, bitter liquid that smelled like warmth and home. Try it, he said. It is how we welcome new friends. Looked at the cup. He had no mouth, no digestive system, no way to consume human beverages, but he reached out with one crystalline hand and touched the cup anyway. I cannot drink it, he said, but I understand what it represents, and I am grateful for what you have shown us. Krill, who had been silent throughout the conversation, suddenly spoke up. I have a question. Yes. I have been observing humans for 5 weeks. I have watched them break rules and ignore protocols and make decisions that seem completely irrational, and yet they succeeded where the coalition would have failed. I have written 3 journals trying to explain this, but I still do not fully understand. He looked at with all 4 eyes. How do you do it? How do you build these networks? How do you create these connections that span the entire galaxy? Smiled. It was a tired smile, but a genuine one. We do not do anything special, he said. We just do what humans have always done. We find places that feel like home. We sit with strangers and share drinks. We tell stories and listen to stories and remember the people we meet. And when someone needs help, we help them. Not because we expect anything in return, just because it is the right thing to do. He lifted his coffee cup. The galaxy is big and cold and empty, but humans have never liked being alone, so we fill the emptiness with connections, with friendships, with moments of warmth in the dark between stars. He gestured at the around them, at the people laughing and talking and building something invisible but unbreakable. This is what that looks like. This is the network, not servers or protocols or official channels. Just people who care about each other, spread across a galaxy that does not understand why. Krill closed his journal. He had finally found the ending he was looking for. Day 37, he said quietly, recording his final thoughts. The mission is complete. The humans have succeeded against all probability, and I have learned something important. What is that? Asked. Krill looked at his empty coffee cup, then at the humans around him, then at the stars visible through the window. The galaxy is not measured in light years, he said. It is measured in the distance between friends, and humans have made that distance very, very small. The morning star would leave tomorrow, returning to coalition space, carrying stories that would spread across human networks like ripples in water. But the would remain. The connections would remain. The network would grow stronger. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, another human ship would stop at an unknown station, and a tired captain would buy a drink for a stranger, and the galaxy would get a little bit smaller. That was how humans worked. That was how they always worked. One cup of coffee at a time.